of the online publication Jadaliyya and a non-resident fellow at the Center for Conflict and Humanitarian Studies. He's joining us from Montreal in Canada. So welcome to the program. So let's start with these various reports we've heard this Monday about a possible ceasefire. It was reported Hamas had accepted something from the Americans, only for the Israelis and the U.S. envoy to deny that. A lot of confusion here, but it doesn't seem like there is any progress.
Well, there's progress, but no deal, in the sense that the United States and Hamas have been negotiating through an intermediary whose name is Bashar al-Bahbah, and who's a Palestinian-American Republican located in the United States. He transmitted proposals from the United States to Hamas. When Hamas accepted them, the Israelis hit the roof and exercised maximum pressure on the U.S., saying that they would refuse to implement this agreement. And then, as we saw repeatedly during the Biden years and earlier this year with the United States, American officials get up and blame Hamas rather than Israel for refusing to accept a deal that they themselves have formulated. I think the ball is now in President Trump's court. Will he allow Israel to continue spurning any agreement and to continue, as it has been, using starvation as a method of war, continuing with its intensified genocidal onslaught and so on? Or will he call Netanyahu, because it really will not take more than a single phone call, and instruct his proxy that he has to implement the deal that the United States has formulated and that the Palestinians have accepted? But there's little reason for optimism on that front.
There are still, of course, these calls for a ceasefire, but also for more aid to enter Gaza. It's increasingly isolating Israel internationally. We've got Spain now encouraging sanctions on Tel Aviv. Many have welcomed this. But are sanctions and even possibly a boycott actually enough when Western nations are still supplying weapons to Israel?
Well, of course, simply taking limited sanctions may well prove insufficient. But I think the more fundamental problem here is that we have a growing volume of statements of concern, of alarm, even of condemnation. But these governments are not going beyond words. And it's perfectly understood by Israel that as long as its Western sponsors and allies limit themselves to verbal statements and take no concrete action, that Israel can safely ignore what these governments are saying and continue with business as usual, particularly because it maintains access to their armories, it maintains access to their markets, and no concrete sanctions are being placed upon it. That, I think, is a key issue. And once sanctions do begin to be imposed, not these charades like Great Britain did last week of continuing with intelligence overflights over Gaza, continuing to supply Israel with weapons, but simply suspending talks about a free trade agreement, then sending its trade representative to Israel. But real meaningful sanctions of withdrawing from Israel goods and services and privileges that it is already receiving. Only then can we really ask the question of, is this sufficient or is more needed?
And that certainly would increase pressure on Israel from the international community. But I do wonder, the type of pressure that Israel gets, is it similar in any way to any type of pressure that Hamas receives right now domestically and even regionally from its backers?
Well, of course, Israel is not being bombed around the clock, and it's defenseless, and it does not have a defenseless civilian population that is being the subject of genocide, resulting in tens of thousands of casualties. But if your question is specifically about the negotiations, I think the real issue is whether this intensified genocidal military pressure is going to make Hamas withdraw its conditioning of any agreement on a commitment to end this war. And the past 18 months have demonstrated that this is very unlikely to be the case, and that the cost of intensifying this military onslaught yet further is going to be paid primarily, if not exclusively, by Gaza's civilian Palestinian population.
Mouin Rabbani, really great to get your thoughts and analysis. Thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you.